creative people. Welcome to our Decorating 101 classes. The last couple of videos I have done, I've used modeling chocolate in my decorating of the cake pops. We're going to get started this morning. A couple of things that we're going to talk about is the diversities of chocolate. So we have your white candy melts and your milk chocolates and your colored candy melts. Most of them are always your white candy melts with coloring. And then we have our dark chocolate. Each one of them have a different flair of cocoa butter in it. So when we're making modeling chocolate, we have to take that into consideration. So our white chocolate has a different cocoa butter content than our milk chocolate. Our milk chocolate has a richer cocoa butter content. So when they make the dark chocolate, it's much more bitter. So as they make the milk chocolate, they take out some of that cocoa butter, they add in sugar and milk, and the more sugar and milk there is, the less cocoa butter there is, and of course it's more sweet. So when we're making modeling chocolate, we need to take that into consideration as we add our corn syrup. We're going to start with our white. What I have today is just simply candy melts from Walmart, and I chose these because these are already the candy wafers making for fondue, so there's barely any cocoa butter in these at all. We're going to go ahead and make modeling chocolate out of this. We're going to use a 16-ounce bag. This here is 16 ounces, so I don't have to use a scale for this. I'm going to use 1 pound of this, and I'm going to add 4 ounces of corn syrup. So I want half a cup. So let's do this. We're going to take our bowl. We're going to empty into our bowl 16 ounces of modeling chocolate. All right. So all I have right now is syrup. I use the light corn syrup for our modeling chocolate. Super simple. And we're going to use half a cup. So I'm not going to fill it to the rim of it. So I'm just going to take it just slightly under the edge. And I'm going to prep my ingredients first. I'm not going to put it in my bowl just yet. I'm just going to prep it. All right. So I don't know if you can see, but it's just under the edge. It's not overflowing. It's not level. It's just under the edge. So I'm going to prep it. Now, the key to our chocolate is to melt it completely. We want our chips to be completely melted, but I do not want to overheat it. For when you add the corn syrup to really super hot chocolate, your modeling chocolate becomes greasy. You might as well have dipped your chocolate in oil, and that's the way it was. But we want a nice, pliable, soft chocolate, so we're going to heat it just until it barely melts that last chip. So I'm going to pop it in the microwave a minute, and I'll be right back. There's my 1 minute. We're going to grab the bowl, and I will show you what it looks like. All right, so in my bowl, I have some melted chocolate along the edges. See that? So we know it's starting to melt around the outside, but not in this. There's nothing melted. I can pick that up and drop it. Absolutely nothing. We want to mix that up and make sure that everything is evenly mixed around there. I do not want to scorch any of my chocolate. All right. Put that all back in there because we want that to melt. Now I'm going to pop that back in the microwave for another 1 minute. Usually it takes about 1 minute and 30 to 40 seconds, depending on whether it's a white chocolate or a dark chocolate. So let me put that back in. Now, the key to making sure our chocolate is the right temperature is we want to make sure that after it's completely melted, we cool that chocolate down to between 90 and 91 degrees. You don't need a thermometer to check it. I usually just take my pinky and put it on my lip. Our body temperature is pretty close. So if we put that chocolate on our lip and it's not burning us, then we know the chocolate is at the right temperature. That's just a simple trick that I've picked up over the years to make sure. And the key is, if, like I said before, if the chocolate is too hot when we add our corn syrup, it'll pull all that cocoa butter to the surface and it won't allow it to emulsify together. There's minute number 2. You can see that it's really melted along the sides, and I have just a few little wafers. And now I use this bowl specifically because it holds the heat. So I don't think I'm going to put it back in. You see those wafers in there? I'm just going to stir it until it melts. And it will melt. It just might take a minute or two. All right, so I have a few little lumps here. I'm just going to continue to stir. See that lump right there? That's still chocolate that hasn't melted. And we want to make sure it's all melted, because if not, when it cools down, it'll be like a lump of a candy wafer in the midst of your modeling chocolate. And it won't, I mean, you won't be able to smooth it out. So we must have it all completely melted. There's some right there yet, still clumps. I don't know if you guys know that as you melt your chocolate, say when you're dipping, the more you melt it, the thinner it gets, and then as it cools, it gets thicker. This is right there at that thicker stage. It's not too hot. All right. I could barely feel it when I touched it with my finger. Yep, we are good to go. And I'm not seeing lumps in there. I'm seeing air bubbles from stirring. So now that it is just cooled enough, I'm going to take my corn syrup that I have, just under a half a cup, and I'm going to pour it in. And as I do it, I'm going to stir. Now, I'm going to explain to you what's going to happen right away. When we mix that corn syrup with this melted chocolate, it's going to look like it seizes. It's going to happen almost right away as I stir it. And I'm just going to keep stirring and stirring and stirring, and it's going to pull away from the bowl. Now, you just want to continue to stir until it's completely integrated. Now, I will tell you guys that a couple of years ago, I had an injury where I popped my bicep and tricep. And that injury has really never healed. So I'm only going to stir it partial, because I can knead it better than I can stir it, because it gets really, really hard. So for those of you that don't have an injury, you can just stir it and stir it and stir it until it comes together in a big ball. I have to do it in 2 steps. So, all right. So I'm going to pour it in like so. Get the rest of it out again. Okay, and here we go. Watch how fast this seizes. And there it goes. You can start to see it along the edges. Make sure I get that melted chocolate underneath there. See how it's still liquid? There's no corn syrup right there. And this is where my muscle says, no more. It's not quite stirred completely, but when you stir it completely the way it's supposed to be, it will absolutely become one nice little ball. But this is where I need to stop, and I will actually come back to it and knead it later, because I can do it with my left hand better. So at this point, I'm going to pull out some parchment. I'm going to dump this out. And that's it. We have modeling chocolate. Now I will need it later because I don't know if you can still see the shiny on it. See the shiny if I go like this? That's the corn syrup. But we will need that. And I'll just come along like this and just kind of help it cool down. Every 15 or 20 minutes or so, I'll just do that until it finally solidifies enough that I can come back and knead it. So I'm going to put this aside, and then we're going to do some dark chocolate. Now remember, we did a half a cup of corn syrup for this one. Dark chocolate is a little bit more corn syrup. So let me pull this aside. All right, so I got another one. It's a little bit bigger. And so the first bag that I used was the chocolate maker from Walmart that is usually for your fondue things. This time I have the Sweet Tooth Fairy. And I think that one comes from Michael's. I think that's the one I got from Michael's. And they come in the 12-ounce bags. So in order to do the 16 ounces, I need a scale. So, all right, so I need 16 ounces. I got to tear my scale. Okay, we know it's going to be one whole bag, which says 12.3 ounces. And we're going to add roughly 4 more ounces. Okay. All right, so now we got 16 ounces. We'll put that aside. Okay, and back in the microwave it goes. We're going to melt this one for 1 minute. All right, here we go. Here's my dark chocolate, and it is just starting to melt, but there's nothing in the middle. So we're going to stir it, get that heat around. We're going to pop it back in the microwave. Okay, we want that in there to melt. While we're waiting for that, let's go ahead. I have 3/4 of a cup here, and again, that's 6 ounces, so it's just shy of 3/4 of a cup. So again, I'm just using a light corn syrup. So it's just under 3/4 of a cup. Now that's ready to go. I'm hoping that by the time I get this one mixed up, I can go back and actually knead that white chocolate for you guys so you can actually see what it looks like. Here's minute 2 on this chocolate. And if you remember with the white chocolate, because it has more sugar and more milk, its melting consistency was a whole lot farther along than it is on the dark chocolate. The dark chocolate has more cocoa butter. So again, we're just going to stir it. My bowl is really nice and hot, so I'm going to see if I can't just let it melt like this, because by the time those wafers finish melting, it should be pretty close to that 90, 91 degrees that I want, so that my chocolate doesn't get too greasy, and then we can knead it all out. See, there it goes. There's a point in which you know that your chocolate just finally starts to reach that melting point. The key is to reach that temperature of melting and not getting it too hot, because you do not want your chocolate to separate from its butterfat. Have you guys ever dipped pops or did something where you're doing the chocolate coating, and when it dries completely, it has those white streaks? I used to do it all the time, couldn't figure out what was going on until I realized, did some research, and found out that my problem was not with the chocolate. My problem was in how fast I heated the chocolate, or how much I heated the chocolate. It got way too hot, and it causes that butterfat to actually separate, and it's called bloom, a chocolate bloom. And the chocolate bloom is just that butter fat coming to the surface and separating from your chocolate itself. When you work with chocolate, the key is patience. The more patience that you have, the better long-term outcome it'll be. I mean, yes, you can get things done quicker, but you might have to go back and fix things because they didn't turn out the way you wanted them. So yes, the key is to just be patient. As you see, I've just been here for what, 2 or 3 minutes, just stirring the chocolate as it started to melt. Because I just want it at that room temperature. There's still a few little clumps in here. We're almost there. I think what I have left is just air bubbles in there. I'm not seeing any clumps. You can see them in there if they're there. But what I'm seeing when I press against the side of the bowl is spots where I've actually popped air bubbles because I've been stirring it. So I think we're good to go. Again, we're going to test our chocolate. And when I touch my chocolate, I'm not feeling it barely at all on my finger. So I'll lick that finger since I'm not selling this. I can do that. So, all right. So at this point in time, we're going to take our just under our 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to grab my spatula over here. Should have put that on the other side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add our cornstarch to this. I'm not, sorry, I said cornstarch. Corn syrup to this. And I want you to see how quickly it seizes. You ready? Here it goes. Ugh. Okay, and this is about where my arm says, no more. So I do apologize. But sometimes you just got to work through, you know, injuries and do what you need to do. All right, so this is good enough for now. I will knead the rest out as it cools off. So again, I'm just going to grab some parchment paper. I'm just going to plop this down here on my parchment paper. And get all this off with my spoon. I want to make chocolate roses with these. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to mix up some chocolate for you guys, since a lot of you didn't have a clue what I was talking about when I started these videos. So, and this is what we will use to actually make chocolate roses. So there we go. And it's just, this one here is nice and almost ready to be kneaded. It's not real glossy, which means I use just enough corn syrup to mix in with that chocolate. Oh, that's beautiful right there. Now, the point of kneading your modeling chocolate is to make sure that that corn syrup is completely integrated. What happens is, as the chocolate and the corn syrup mixture cools, you will, if it wasn't mixed completely, now I know that that's possible because I don't stir it long enough in the bowl to make sure it's completely incorporated. So the kneading portion is just making sure, maybe not, it's stuck. So that's a warm spot. You can tell when it's not cool enough. when it still sticks to the parchment. So this might not be ready yet. But the key is just to make sure that all that corn syrup is completely integrated. Okay, it's still sticking to my glove, so bummer. I thought that was going to be close. So we'll just put it off to the side for a minute. Let me grab that white. So let's take a look at this. All right. I don't know if you can see this, but like right here, can you guys see that? This is corn syrup that is cooled that was not incorporated inside my modeling chocolate. Can you drop in there? Can you see what I'm referring to? It actually is cooled down corn syrup. All right, so the idea is we are going to, it might not be ready to go yet either. This would be a bummer. Usually you have to let it sit about 30 minutes before you can do this. And I'm gonna try. All right. Put that over here. And the key is just to incorporate the oils from the corn syrup back into that chocolate. It's still a little warm because all I'm doing is pushing out. I don't know if you can see on the table, I'm pushing out that corn syrup as my chocolate is too warm yet because I didn't let it sit for 30 minutes. But this is what you do. And when you're done, it actually will look more like this. It won't be glossy. That chocolate's just beautiful there. So I'll have to do this again after it completely cools. It's like sticking to my fingers. See, now it's cooled down. And all it is you're just incorporating that corn syrup. So at this point, we're just going to wrap it in some saran wrap and just let it completely come to room temperature. And now we're ready to start making whatever you want with it. All right, my creative friends, go this week and make some modeling chocolate and try to play with it. We'll see you the next time.